Hey, everybody. Welcome to the second hour of the Santita Jackson Show here on AM 950 Radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota. It's a joy to be with you today. Oh boy, we're kicking off the Democratic National Convention, having had the uh, Rainbow Push International Conference. We're so excited to have Greg Palast with us today because we are showing his incredible movie with us today. And we're going to get back and I'm going to give him the proper introduction in just a few seconds. In the meantime, I'm going to do a little housekeeping. I want you all to please join the show, like and share it. Go to AM 950 Radio and iam950radio.com to listen, but also go to the Santita Jackson Show YouTube channel. The Santita Jackson Show YouTube channel. Hey, Ashley is over there from Memphis. And please like and share. Like and share. Like and share. Well, at the YouTube channel, you need to like and subscribe and let people know. But I need you to help us with the algorithms and like the show. Thumbs up, thumbs up, thumbs up. And then go to the Santita Jackson and Friends Facebook page and like me there. That is where I can receive friends. The Santita Jackson page is not where I can receive friends. In fact, if I accept you, Facebook pushes you off because I'm at my limit there. And so they continue to reject people. And so many of you think that you're my friends, but you've been pushed into the margins, which is why I had to open up the Santita Jackson and Friends fan page. And I have I have so much love for you. I want us all to build this community. You know what I mean? So please go to the Santita Jackson and Friends page and go to X where I am at Santita J. Let's talk about the vote. Voter suppression, protecting the vote. Um, there's a lot going on, and we're not really talking about it. Everybody keeps saying that this is the most consequential election of our lifetime, and more, it seems as the republic is under threat. As the threats increase to it, your vote becomes even more precious, but it's also more vulnerable than ever before. So we've gathered Ariel Gold, Fellowship of Reconciliation, their executive director, who's on her way to Chicago for the Rainbow Push Convention, as well as the Democratic National Convention, Dr. LaShawn Latrice, Make Noise for Change, Rainbow Push Convention, and the Nation magazine is honoring Reverend Jesse Jackson on Sunday. You don't want to miss it. Congressman Ro Khanna, Senator Bernie Sanders, Congresswoman Ilhan Omar, Katrina Vanden Heuvel, and John Nichols and the folks over at the Nation magazine, Reverend Dr. William Barber, Reverend Al Sharpton, and so many people are coming together to honor Reverend Jackson's the 40th anniversary of his presidential run. It's going to be something really, really special. And it'll be like really the tribute of the convention season, if you will, to Reverend Jackson. I think they're going to do something where we're going to be honoring Reverend Jackson fully at the Democratic convention, but that's been scaled back. They're just going to uh, I think, talk about civil rights leaders and I guess put him in it. But no matter, the work has been done and the work is ongoing, and we're glad about that. That having been said, someone for whom Reverend Jackson has tremendous admiration, and they're kind of on the same page here. Maybe it's a University of Chicago thing where you both went to school. I don't know. But you're always talking about the vote. And of course, I've been following you for years, but one of the you really got my attention in 2000 as I and the nation and the world were riveted by the election. It's like, wait a minute, it seems like this election is being stolen in plain sight. And no one is talking about this. But there was an intrepid investigative journalist who was doing that, armed with impeccable credentials, a University of Chicago pedigree and degree, background in economics, brilliant, brilliant journalist, but he couldn't get the story, Dr. Latrice and Ariel Gold. He couldn't get it on the air in the United States. Fortunately, I had a computer, so I was able to find it, but I was dismayed to find that as we were preparing to march on Tallahassee, as this story had been kicked to, as this case had been kicked to the Supreme Courts, it was this man who was helping me to see what was happening in real time. Not corporate media. And so I want you to welcome this investigative reporter who has been he's no stranger to the show and Dee Dee's family here. The Guardian, New York Times, Rolling Stone. I'm going to have to put that in there, yes, because I'm a subscriber, have been since I was a child. And on Saturday, at the invitation of Reverend Jesse Jackson and myself, Reverend Jackson was very, very eager to get Greg Palast in to the convention to show his movie Vigilante. Of course, years ago we showed you The Best Democracy Money Can Buy. It's a New York Times bestseller, the book, but it's also a wonderful documentary, The Best Democracy Money Can Buy. And many of you got Vigilante. You were able to stream it several years ago. Well, now he has a new updated version. It's essentially a new film. And we're kind of in between. He flew in, Dr. LaShawn Latrice and Ariel Gold. He flew in from Portugal with his computer so that he could show us this movie because he is helping us to see the direct threats to the vote. I don't think we can overstate that. It's something, I have to tell you, if there is one string on Reverend Jackson's guitar, it's about the vote. And I remember him asking him, and our beloved Reverend Frank Watkins, who has since passed on, why is it that you all are so focused on the vote? And they both said, and Frank really broke it down for us. He said, because that is the basis upon which all of our other rights flow. If you don't have the right to vote, you're not a citizen. There is a reason that the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments, one gave us freedom, one gave us citizenship, and the other gave us the vote. The Voting Rights Act is a direct outgrowth of that. In 1870, we got the right to vote. But by 1964, 1965, LBJ, President Johnson was dismayed to see that there were still so many barriers to the vote for Black people in particular. So that's where the Voting Rights Act comes from. And that's why the gutting of it has been so devastating. So, we welcome you to the show, Greg Palast. I hope I gave you some context, not that you need any, but you're going to be showing this movie Vigilante at Rainbow Push. Dr. LaShawn Latrice needs you to reach into your network, get people over there so we can see it. Because I promise you, my mother's getting popcorn and little snicky snacks. She said, we might as well. Well, she did that the last time. She said, oh, this is going to be great. Because we really loved the movie when we saw it. And we're anxious to see what you've added to it, what you're adding to it, because you're in the midst of the uh, editing process, but you're bringing you're in between, but you're bringing us more current information than we had several years ago.
Yes.
What
Totally
is tell us about Vigilante and
okay,
what
so the new film, yeah, so the new film is Vigilantes Inc., America's Vote Suppression Hitmen. And Jamie Foxx saw a sneak preview and he said, this is a great, great film. You got to see it. Leonardo DiCaprio said, you got to see it. He might be prejudiced. His dad is a producer. It is narrated by the wonderful Rosario Dawson. And also and it's also produced by Martin Sheen, my favorite president, President Bartlett.
We love him.
Yes, and it has a lot of your good friends in there. Latasha Brown of Black Voters Matter Fund, Gerald Griggs, NAACP president, and others. But even more important, it has these vigilantes, the bad guys. Now, there's a new whole process in America. And it started in Georgia. That's why we did a film just on Georgia a couple of years ago, in which the law says many states are saying you can, as an individual, challenge someone else's vote. So I can say Santita Jackson shouldn't be allowed to vote here in Chicago because she's really a resident of Minneapolis. Now, you would say, well, yeah, there's that old Jim Crow laws on the books that they were aimed at keeping Black people off or this challenge business. But now this is something brand new, Santita, where we have in the film, I open up confronting a GOP official. She works with Marjorie Taylor Greene. She personally handed in a thumb drive to her county, challenging over 32,000 voters, almost all of them Black and young people. And I met some of the people whose votes she tried to block, and I asked her about those. And you'll see in the beginning of the film, near the beginning, where her house is stacked with ammo and loaded guns all over the place. And she threatens me and throws me out of the house using words I can't use on the air. So it's kind of a fun, I can say it's kind of a fun confrontation. It seems like a lot of fun, confronting someone that chases me out of her house. Except I have to say that the local crew that I had in Atlanta, they were so scared that because they had these guns right next to them and they were threatening me. In fact, her husband actually jumped at me. And so my local crew literally ran out of the house. They didn't want to get shot, So, and then we did another one where we found another one of these vigilantes. And what his specialty, he was a vice chairman of the Republican Party. And he actually dresses like a vigilante. He dressed up like Doc Holliday with these pearl-handled 6 guns and holsters. And I said, "Are those loaded?" He said, "Yeah. What's the point of carrying a gun if it's not loaded?" And so that was kind of nerve-wracking. He had challenged the vote of thousands of black soldiers out of Fort Benning. His name has been changed now, but out of Fort Benning, including Major Gamaliel Turner, whose father was one of the co-founders with Martin Luther King and the Reverend Ralph Abernathy of the Southern Christian Leadership Conference. So they picked on a guy from a civil rights family like your own and blocked him from voting. And this whole new vigilante challenge stuff where this guy challenged 4,000 people at once. You had 88 vigilantes. And by the way, so you'll see we confront him in the film. He says that Major Turner, because he was assigned to California for a short time by the President of the United States, and so they challenged his right to vote in Georgia with other black soldiers. And he calls up the voting officials in Georgia and says, "Well, send me my absentee ballot." They said, "No, you've been challenged." They said, and he said, "So what? So who cares?" And I give me my ballot. And they said, "All you have to do is come into our office and show us ID, prove you are who you are." Well, he said, "Wait a minute. You're asking me, an American soldier, my American citizen. I'm registered to vote. I'm trying to vote. And you're telling me 2 days before the election that all I have to do is fly to Georgia." Ultimately, he did that, by the way. That's how important his vote was to him. But if you remember how close this was, Biden won Georgia famously by less than 12,000 votes, which Trump kept trying to overturn. If they had succeeded in even one county in these challenges, well, they succeeded in removing the black soldiers from Fort Benning. That was 4,000 votes. But all the other challenges failed. But now the law has changed to make it easier. So now what's happening, Santita, and you'll see this in the film. Now our film has gone national. That's why I call it Vigilantes, Inc. And the other reason we call it Vigilantes, Inc. and take it out to the other states is that in Georgia, they had 88 vigilantes, all of them Republicans. And I'm not being partisan. They were just all Republicans going after voters of color. And there were 88 in Georgia. They challenged 180,000 people. But now, the group that started this vigilante stuff, called True to Vote out of Texas, these characters have now signed up. Are you ready? They've gone from 88 volunteers, vigilantes, to 40,000. 8,000 of them have already filed over just short of 1 million voters have already been challenged. This is a silent slaughter of voting rights in America right now. No one's talking about it. There was a little tiny article in the New York Times. No one's talking about this. So they literally, as of 2 weeks ago, they had already challenged 851,000 voters in America, and a lot of them are violent. Commissioner Rodney Ellis of Harris County, which is Houston, and they were outside his house with weapons. The same characters thought that he had forged that Rodney Ellis, who's the first black commissioner in Houston, that's Harris County. And they said that this black commissioner had personally forged 750,000 fake absentee ballots, which, as I pointed out to him in the film, would have taken him at 8 seconds each about 200 years to do. But they said that he stole 750,000 ballots, put them in an air conditioning truck, and ran off and had some guy run off with them. They ran the air conditioning truck off the road, put a gun to the guy's head, the driver, and said, "Open up the back, give us your stolen ballots." He opens the back and there's air conditioning parts. So this is what's going on here. It's very dangerous. And they're showing up at polling. These vigilantes are showing up at drop boxes armed with automatic weapons, standing at the drop boxes. They're intimidating elections officials. But we're looking at already almost 1 million voters have been challenged already. No one's saying anything about this. Most people don't even know that they've been challenged. The major found out only because he says, "Where's my ballot?" And he called. A lot of people won't get their absentee ballots or will show up on election day. They'll say, "Sorry, your name is not here." They'll give you a provisional ballot and they throw it out. If the only way you get a provisional, you can vote is a provisional ballot, take it, but really come back with your ID, whatever it takes to get a ballot, because in 4 years ago, over 1 million provisional ballots were thrown out. So this is a big problem. So you'll see in the film, we have lots of fun and games in the film, but it's also tragic. A lot of tears in that film, a lot of scary stuff in that film. Major Turner's mother and his father, the minister, always kept a gun in each of their Bibles. And the major thought he might have to use it if this vigilante with the 6 guns started getting a little bit violent with us. So
all of this over the vote.
Yes.
What is the problem? I mean, and I'm going to kick this to Dr. Latrice, LaShawn Latrice of Make Noise for Change, and of course, the executive director of the Fellowship of Reconciliation, Ariel Gold. I mean, because we take it as an article of faith, Greg Palast, even though we don't have the federally protected right to vote. I mean, Scalia was right. If you're right, you're right. He's correct. His reading of the Constitution, he was an originalist, but there is no explicit language in there to protect our right to vote. But this fight, I mean, pulling guns on people and pulling out the zip drive with 30,000+ names, the fact that people are combing the voter rolls to find us and get us kicked off, this is amazing. And no one but you in the main is talking about it. What is it about the vote, and why are the threats to it not being covered by corporate media?
You're asking me?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah. The answer is, when you found my stuff, I was living in Britain and doing these investigations of what happened to the African-American vote in America. It seems to be disappearing. And then I find out that they're systematically removing it. Started out in Florida, calling tens of thousands of Black men ex-cons who are not allowed to vote. They had about 58,000 names. Not a single one, not one, was an illegal ex-con voter. They took things like there was a young Gulf War veteran named Willie Steen, and he was matched with a white guy who had been convicted of a crime in Ohio called Willie Osteen. But, as far as Florida was concerned, he was Black. And by the way, they didn't have to guess who was Black, because in Florida at the time, right next to your name, it would say BLA for Black on the voter registration roll. So they weren't guessing about who they were targeting. And I didn't have to guess either. When I looked at those names, I said, what's going on here? And so they were purging the rolls. Now this whole new thing is that you don't have to be a state official anymore to challenge thousands of your neighbors. Like I said, it's getting towards 1 million. You'll see it in the film. It's absolutely wacky. And the other thing you'll find out in the film, and the reason why the film's called Vigilantes, Inc., is that this plan to have individuals challenge Black voters en masse was first created by the Ku Klux Klan in 1942. So the GOP plan is literally the Klan plan. And in 1942, the Klan actually incorporated itself, created a corporation whose sole purpose was challenging Black voters. And they called the Klan incorporated itself as Vigilantes, Inc. And right now, believe it or not, the right wing, they're calling this challenge plan Vigilantes, Inc. as well. They literally taking the Klan plan. And here's the weird difference, Santita. In 1946, the FBI decided that this mass challenge of Black voters was against the law in 46, and they were about to arrest the Klan's chief whom they elected governor of Georgia, Eugene Talmadge. And they were about to arrest him, but he drank himself to death just before he was going to be arrested.
You are terrible.
You'll see that in the film. It's a lot of fun. It's scary. It's funny. And you know, who can resist Rosario Dawson's voice?
Look, I'm sorry. And I shouldn't laugh at someone drinking themselves to death before they deny us.
He's a pretty goofy guy.
That is crazy. Look, Dr. LaShawn Latrice, what do you make of this? I mean, did you know that the attacks upon the vote were going at full speed?
No, not at all. But I am not surprised, because a few years ago when we went down to Georgia to flip the vote, you remember all of that chaos around that? And I could remember, like, I don't know how I did it, but I packed my family up. Somebody said, hey, we're going down because they're doing this in Georgia. And I packed my family up and we went down there for about a week and a half, and it was unbelievable. So I know that they have these little sneaky devices and tactics, but oh my God, this is in plain sight. This is like a huge disservice. And I think that the more people that know about it and we expose what's going on, I think we'll get, more of a response. But people don't know about this because it's hidden. You know how the media does.
Well, do you think that this would be animating to voters to get this kind of information? I mean, because they keep saying that Black voters, and it's so offensive to me, Greg Palast and Dr. Latrice and Ariel Gold, when they say that, Black folks just might be apathetic and sit home. No. Black people, we've been here before 1619. We came here with the Spaniards in 1532. Right. We've been here almost 500 years. We have been lied to. We've been lynched. If you just go from 1619 to now, if you go to the lynching museum, the anti-lynching museum, thank you, Brian Stevenson and the Equal Justice Initiative in Alabama. If you go down there, they have metal suspended from the ceilings to represent each proved lynching in the United States. Greg Palast, I'm sure you know about this already. And when he opened this museum, it had been 400 years, which is 480 months. It was 4,800 months, right? I said, wait a minute, this is a lynching a month. Every month since we've been here. Mm-hmm. And you haven't gotten to all of them yet. And so when you talk about us not, being apathetic, that's not true. Have we been disappointed? Yes. And is there anger, Greg? Yes. So it's like, wait a minute, but we don't even know. And there is also a campaign to tell us that our votes don't matter. That has been thus. And I think what your work shows us is that it really is of tremendous consequence. And people are spending an inordinate amount of time to block us from voting, to suppress the vote. And these tactics are numerous. And these people never stop, Greg. My father said slave masters never retire. He was right.
Well, when you talk about mainstream media, so I was mainstream media. That is, I was BBC, which is the biggest TV network in the world, but it's not commercial. And I was with the Guardian newspapers, which, by the way, most people don't realize is a not-for-profit newspaper. And I was also I was finally brought back to the United States by The Nation magazine as a Nation Fellow. And so please come Sunday for the event, but Saturday, 4 p.m., Rainbow Push headquarters, 4 p.m. Saturday, to see Vigilantes Inc. This is going to be a special sneak preview because it's official red carpet opening in Hollywood with the DiCaprios will be in starting September 6th. So this is a special sneak preview just for the Reverend Jesse L. Jackson and Rainbow Push and my good friends in Chicago. And it's been hard to get the U.S. mainstream to pick up this issue. And there was a lot of people who were saying, if you tell people that their vote might not count, or they may be challenged, then they'll just say, oh, skip it. I haven't seen that. Stacey Abrams proved that wrong. when you finally raise the issue, it gets people angry and it gets people motivated. We saw massive turnout in Georgia, which overwhelmed the steal. By the way, that's the number one way to overwhelm the steal, to overwhelm suppression, which is a fancy word for just taking votes away from Black people and people of color. You just, number one, you overwhelm it. And by the way, number two, to protect your own vote, please check your registration. One thing that happens in our film is you meet Christine Jordan, Martin Luther King's cousin. I was at the polling station with her when she was 92 years old. It was by accident. I happened to be at the polling station in a pouring storm in Atlanta. She goes in to vote. This is going to be her 50th year of voting. She registered for the first time the year her cousin was murdered. And they told this 92-year-old woman, you can't vote here. You've been challenged. Your name's off the rolls. It's like, what? They said that she didn't live in Atlanta anymore. So I went to her house where she's down the street from the polling station. The house they said she didn't live in, there's a picture of her with Dr. King having dinner, Sunday dinner. And this is the type of, terrible things they're doing. But one way to stop this is to please, 60 days before an election, tell everyone you know, check your registration. I don't care, like Christine Jordan, if you've been voting the same place for half a century, they could knock you off at any point. And that's why we're showing this film as a warning. It's been used by NAACP and other groups, including also the Hispanic organization, Southwest Voter Registration Education Project. We work with all the voting rights groups, and of course, Rainbow Push, and the great C.K. Hoffler is one of the attorneys I work with. And Gerald Griggs, as I mentioned, he's in the film. He's head of the NAACP. People know him as the guy that got R. Kelly put away. So he's a tough cookie, and actually was acted as attorney for me. And you'll also meet the great Helen Butler, who is Mrs. Vote, and who basically the Republican Party went after, and she's one of the top voting experts in Georgia, and Governor Brian Kemp removed her, yanked her off the elections board, and put in GOP goons. I mean, and I say that, I'm not being partisan. These people are seriously dangerous. In fact, you had a state election board member a couple Saturdays ago at a Donald Trump rally, and Trump personally thanked her for helping us to victory. Now, I didn't know a person election board was supposed to be part of a candidate's plan for victory. And this is the games that they are playing, but they're doing it all over the country now. In Wisconsin, if you're listening or picking up in Wisconsin, this is a very, very serious business. We stopped them working with Black Voters Matter Fund and lawyers. We were able to stop the state of Wisconsin from purging 135,000 people, almost all Black people in Milwaukee and students in Madison. And you'll see that in the film. So the film, like I say, is informative, terrifying, but it'll be 4 a.m. Saturday, Rainbow Push. And the lovely Santita Jackson will be there, is my understanding.
That's right. I mean, look, I have to be there because, Ariel Gold, I think with all the things that are really front of mind for us, Gaza, we keep saying, it's our tax dollars that's paying for this atrocity there. That's the vote. You can vote people in we see how hard it is. There's this pushback against not just AIPAC, but other just organizations, Big Pharma, all these organizations, that have outsized influence on votes in Congress and in the state legislatures. But, I think something as basic as we tell people to get out and vote, but they don't even realize how threatened the vote is. Or Ariel Gold, they look at it as simply a Black problem. It's a Black problem, no question. It's a brown problem, no question. But guess what? My great grandmother used to say, Greg Palast and Dr. LaShawn Latrice, Ariel Gold, I'm giving this to you. If something's unbelievable, don't believe it. And you need to be careful it's dangerous to forget, you would always say. The Bible tells you not to remove the ancient landmarks which thy fathers and mothers have set. We're barely 3 generations into everybody having the full vote in the United States. And I'm just looking at all of these big issues domestically and internationally that require us to hire representatives. How do you do that? You vote. And yet he's telling us, giving us these stories that no, they're not even, they're talking about Trump and his personality. And I might, if I'm not careful, I can get to the polling place and find that I'm not there. Ariel Gold.
Yeah, well, we know what this country is built on: genocide and slavery. And still today, we are a system of institutionalized racism. So I think it's in America's nature to try to deny the vote. And this is our job, right? I have to say, when I see people, I see people all the time on social media, basically the don't vote, it only encourages them, right? Like the I hate all the candidates. And I just think you are so privileged and so full of luxury. And I think of my friends in places who don't have the vote, like the West Bank, though they live under that system. And I am like, you pompous, I'll control my language there.
Thank you. Thank you.
We can be radical while also utilizing the system and participating in and gaining incremental change. In fact, it's often radicalism that gives us incremental change. And we usually find out that these folks who are saying that, who are kind of poo-pooing the vote, we have this horrible two-party system, so it doesn't speak for us anyway. Usually they're in positions of privilege, right? They're in positions where they can withstand another Donald Trump presidency. Because let's face it, some people, certain cities, certain income brackets, certain colors are much better positioned to withstand another Donald Trump presidency, whereas other folks, and we have to be mindful that we are acting on behalf of everyone, can't. And so we have to balance that radicalness. I heard a friend say just the other night, and I loved this. She said, I'm voting for the person I want to protest.
Does she sound like my mom or what?
And I was like, yes, vote for the person you want to protest.
Why? But what's the logic of that?
It's much harder to protest Donald Trump. That doesn't mean we're not going to be protesting. We're voting for the person we want to protest, to advocate to. And that's just what it is. And I think that is radical. So there's my rant.
No, but is it really a rant, Ariel? Given where we are right now. Because we're talking about all of these existential threats. To democracy, that just sounds too broad. To freedom of speech, we're being censored all over the place. Freedom of movement, freedom of assembly. Many groups were not able to get the permits to march in Chicago. And even corporate media who represent themselves as the mainstream media, they won't talk about it. This is happening right now, and they won't talk about it, Ariel. I've got to hear about Trump all day long, what they thought, what they think he thought. I'm like, I didn't know you all were Miss Cleo. I didn't know that you were psychics who could figure people out, Greg. This is serious business. What happened? No. Let me back this up. Mm-hmm. What happens if our votes are just peeled away, right? What happens if explain that? Why is that important why is this our fight now? Because you say this all the time, and like I said, you and Reverend have this one string guitar, and this is what they pluck. Jose Feliciano, sit down, because they are going to play Chris Christopherson, Willie Nelson. This is all they got. But you know what? At the end of the day, I promise you, if on that first Tuesday in November you walk into that polling place and you just casually give them your name, because I just moved, they were trying to find me, and I'm like breaking out into a sweat because I didn't have a chance to vote early, which I typically do. And I said, wait, because I just got my first utility bill. So fortunately, I have this, but they also knew me, but that's not enough. I said, where am I on here? Because I mean, I have the voter registration card. They were like, that's not enough. I said, I mean, Greg, this is
This is the new
serious.
gotcha system, and this is one of the dangers of things. And you're in a state which is one of the least problematic, which is Illinois. But when you get to, especially to Wisconsin,
I'm in
where
Chicago, Greg. Come on now, you went to U of C.
yeah, it's just old history. And yeah, I certainly remember the days of Boss Daily. So what so yeah, so like the great late Reverend Watkins said, every single right we have is based on the right to vote. You don't have the right to vote, you don't have nothing. And so that's why it's important. And I'm sorry if you don't like all the candidate choices, but you can't go into McDonald's and order sushi. You got to make a decision. That's all there is to it. So you got to be, it's our job. And like you said, then you pick the person you want to protest, because voting isn't the end of it. You got to keep the politicians honest and keep them to their promises and principles. But so that's why I do this film, and I make it about voting, and I also try to make it as entertaining as possible. That's why we have people like Leonardo DiCaprio and a lot of movie stars, from Sacha Baron Cohen to Mark Ruffalo and others, saying this is a wonderful film. You got to see this, because it is a movie. It's a nonfiction movie. And so we'll be at Rainbow Push at 4 p.m. on Saturday and get to take a look.
Well, I mean, explain to me, when you are talking to people who feel, who really feel that they're saying, I don't want to vote. I'm just disgusted with the rot in the system. We're hearing a lot of that, Ariel. You know that. Dr. LaShawn Latrice, we're hearing that. What do you say to them, Greg? I mean, because
yeah, well, what's happened is that where the rubber meets through places like Georgia, you have a black turnout exceeding white turnout for the past decade or so. So people are getting smart and sophisticated that their vote counts. I mean, the black turnout in Georgia was way above percentage white than the white vote. Despite every impediment, roadblock, purging by the state of Georgia, attacks by vigilantes and the Klan and everything else. But that's why they're doing something desperate. And one of the things you'll find in the film that we talk about, which is the brand new danger, another one that people aren't talking about, is the push not to certify the vote if Harris wins a county or a state. Remember, Donald Trump called up the Secretary of State of Georgia and said, find me 11,780 votes, which would give him Georgia and the presidency by a single vote. And the Secretary of State said, I can't do that. Trump ended up getting indicted for that demand. Well, guess what? That demand is now legal. He could get away with it in 2024 because they've changed the whole board of elections. So it's this partisan GOP board. And they have literally announced that they're not going to certify the results from any county that they feel has not reviewed their voting process. And they've already said that Fulton County, Georgia, has not met the standards to have their votes certified. You may know Fulton County as Atlanta. So you can imagine the heart of Black Georgia. They're going to say those votes from that county don't count. And we're seeing this anti-certification campaign blow out from Georgia to another dozen GOP-controlled states. And that's what it's going to be. There's going to be a battle. Even you're going to say you're going to get the word Harris has won, just like we heard Al Gore won, and then they reversed it on us. You're going to hear Harris has won, and then you're going to have all these states not certifying Black counties.
I mean, what do you make of that? Dr. LaShawn Latrice, because it's not just a problem in the South,
It,
right?
it sounds like it is a surefire way to catch people while they're not paying attention. And I think with movies like what Greg is doing, it is a way to open our eyes. And we have to be catalysts to get the word out that this movie is going to be something that people need to see, because it's something that can, in essence, change the face of how we vote and who votes. And if people are not paying enough attention, they can be stripped from the rolls and go thinking that they're going to vote and they have no vote. And I just think that this is enlightening for me. This is eye-opening. It's alarming, and it is blowing my mind.
Why is it blowing your mind?
Because who would have thought that they have taken these measures to try and get as many people off the rolls as possible without people looking, but they're actually doing it in plain sight. The nerve, the audacity.
And I think that's what's galling, Greg Palast, that this is happening in plain sight. And well, thankfully, I'm not going to talk about what we don't have. Although I keep asking about corporate media because I want us to acknowledge, I want us to recognize, what we're looking at. But what we do have in you is someone who has dedicated his life to really investigating, uh, and I mean, to ensuring that we have the right to vote, but really helping us to see Ariel Gold and Dr. LaShawn Latrice, the actual physical threats to the vote, because this is happening, and you don't really think about this sort of thing, Greg Palast, until you get to the polls. And by the time you get to the polls, you're nervous, you're scared. It really is very late in the process. So help me to understand. I mean, what can we do just in your just given the work that you've done? What can we do? What are some of the things that you've seen people do to push back against the threat to the actual vote?
Oh, it works on many levels. The first thing is, like I say, protect your own vote. That is, tell everyone you know to check their registration before they go to at least 60 days before the polling to see if you've been challenged. But this new challenge business, you can be challenged on election day in a lot of these states. And so the other thing is make sure that you bring every kind of ID that shows your current address, who you are, something with a photo. Even in states that don't supposedly require ID, you end up having to show your ID if you're knocked off. In Wisconsin, by the way, you can, if they say your name isn't there, they don't always tell you this, but Wisconsin is a same-day registration state, meaning you can actually register at the polls, register right on that day. So if they say, well, your name's not here, say, well, then I'll re-register right now. The other thing is, join up with the Rainbow Push, with NAACP, ACLU, Urban League, and the other groups that I've been working with, and especially like Black Voters Matter Fund with Latasha Brown.
Mm-hmm.
These are great organizations. Join, participate, and finally, a couple things is, by the way, you'll be able to go see the film later at gregpalast.com after we have our Hollywood premiere. But so go to gregpalast.com, get the information, spread it around to your lists, get people warned. And especially if you know people in swing states, Arizona, Georgia, Wisconsin, Minnesota will probably not be in play because of walls. Michigan, I'm very concerned about voting there, because what's happened is that you may even have a Democratic governor, but you'll have a Republican legislature, which has added new restrictions on the vote. So go to gregpalast.com. It's GREGPALAST. Get the info and see you at Rainbow Push on Saturday.
Well, when we look at where we are with the vote today, are you surprised that we're here? Is this these attacks upon the vote? I'm just trying to figure out how to say it. When we looked at the Scalia decision from 2000, is this a direct result of that?
Oh, absolutely. What happened? Well, you have two things. You have the 2000 decision in which Al Gore, basically the Supreme Court picked our president. Supposedly George Bush, W. Bush, won Florida and the president of the United States by just 537 votes. But they had not finished counting the votes, especially in black counties. And the Secretary of State, Katherine Harris, a violently partisan right-wing Republican, simply ordered a halt to the vote count. She literally ordered a halt to the vote count because Bush's presidency was disappearing by just a couple hundred votes.
But I want you to say
that.
this. Hold on, Greg.
Yep.
That we had not finished counting the votes in the black counties.
Yes.
No, I don't want us to rush past that, Latrice and Ariel. Because I think, didn't they find out after this was all over that Gore actually did win?
Absolutely. I was down there. And so what happened is for example, Gadsden County, which has the highest percentage black population in all of Florida, they had disqualified 700 ballots because people had written in Al Gore's name on the ballot because the ballot was misprinted. It said write in candidate's name. So 700 people in Gadsden wrote in Al Gore, wrote out his name. And they said those ballots were all disqualified. But if they've been reviewed, because the voter intent is supposed to count, well, who do you think you're voting for? If someone checked the box Al Gore and then wrote Al Gore, what was their intent? So that was 700 black votes that would have made Gore president. None of them were counted. And that was just the beginning of there were about 170,000 ballots not counted in Florida. And overwhelmingly, it was the likelihood that your ballot was not counted and rejected was 700% higher if you're black than you're white. I mean, so Al Gore's victory was in that pile of votes. So, obviously,
why didn't the Democrats say anything about that?
I had a discussion with the chair, the chairman of the Democratic Party at the time was losing his mind because he could not get Democrats to pick up the issue at that time. And, it really took. Remember, we didn't really have a real fight over where finally Democrats finally stood up against vote suppression until Stacey Abrams ran for governor in 2018 and proved that if you raise your voice, if you protest against this type of misuse of our democracy, that it will motivate people to come out and vote. The Democrats used to believe if you say your vote doesn't count, people is not getting counted, that people will not come out to vote. It's not true. We're telling you your vote's in danger, protect your vote, fight against this. And whatever you do, don't let them, there's a woman in our film who was the first African-American elected to the town council of Douglas, Georgia. And name's Olivia. And she was actually arrested by Brian Kemp for helping a disabled voter to vote. But the disabled voter had actually filled out a form. If I'm disabled, I need help voting. And so she was literally arrested, facing 5 years felony charges, the first black official in Douglas. A jury took literally minutes to acquit her because they thought the charges was just such nonsense. And the young woman who was voting told her, well, I don't want to vote now. And she said, well, that's the whole point. That's what they want you to do. They want you to not fight for your vote, just like Major Turner. I mean, he literally flew to Georgia to get his vote and fought for it and went to court. He had to get a court order, federal court order, to have his vote counted. But because he understood how important it is. And that's, and you can get these, again, you get these stories at gregpals.com, but I'd love to see you at Push headquarters, 4 p.m. This Saturday. That's tomorrow.
With your popcorn and we're going to have all of that, but you found out something. I only have about 3 or 4 minutes left here, but Dr. LaShawn, Latrice, and Ariel Gold, I want you to hear this because I heard an audible gasp when Greg presented this fact in the film. Governor Kemp, of course, of Georgia, to whom he just referenced just a few minutes ago. You found out something very interesting about his family.
Yes, the Kemp family used to be called Habersham, a name that they don't like to use because the Habershams were the very first people to bring uh, enslaved Africans, to bring Africans in chains to Georgia. You know, not many people know this strange history of Georgia. Georgia was one of the few places in America that outlawed slavery. It was outlawed in Georgia. And Kemp's ancestors got King George, who we'd later have to fight for our independence. They got King George to give them a charter to bring in Africans, despite there being a law against it. By the way, Africans were high skilled. They were the high skilled workers. They were because they knew from the west coast of Africa, they knew how to grow rice. These Brits had no idea how you grow rice, but that was their main product before cotton. And so it's his family made its fortune. This guy is very, very wealthy, which is literally wealth gained on the backs of enslaved people. His own cousin has said, well, I don't know why my cousin, the governor, won't admit that our family made its money from enslaved Africans. Why we, that's the history. Just didn't fess up to it. Because as soon as you fess up to it, you have to do something about repairing that damage, don't you? And so, so we have to talk about the history, as we have the Geechee Gullah ring shouters in the film who do brilliant singing, and it's wonderful. And they brought back the songs of the enslavement era, and just after that. And the thing is, as their lead singer says, if you suppress history, you suppress the vote. That's crucial in our film.
And we will be at Rainbow Push as we are in the midst of our convention, and you will see that film, and you will get those tidbits of information and so much more. And you'll get a chance to meet Greg Palast and, of course, Attorney Darrell Jones and Attorney Barbara Arnwine of the Transformative Justice Coalition will be at that film as also, and so will Reverend Jackson, because it means that much to us. We need to know everybody. Dr. LaShawn Latrice will be there. And Dr. Latrice, you've got to bring some people there so they can see this. And we are also, several people have already said that they have been sharing the film from several years ago. And so when it comes back out, we need you to share it, because that ought to be an event, Ariel Gold, that we are hosting in this election season. Because you know what, we're looking at the presidency, but everybody, down ballot voting is everything. As you can see, we're talking about the governor of Georgia. You need to be very clear. Your governor matters. Your state legislatures matter. They feed into Washington. Washington does not feed into them. It's important for you to know that. So, Ariel Gold, I got about 30 seconds for you. Do you want to say anything before we go? As she is packing and getting ready to come to Chicago.
Well, I just want to say that folks should come to Chicago. There's incredible, important programming going on at Rainbow Push, starting Saturday, right?
Yeah, well, it just started, but Saturday we're going to have Greg Palast, who's come in from Portugal to be with us.
And 3 days of programming about Palestinian voices that need to be heard.
Absolutely.
And not being heard enough in this by this party.
Absolutely. So we're talking about it all. Dr. LaShawn Latrice, got 30 seconds for you. Your thoughts?
I just want to say I really am I'm so appreciative of being a part of this panel, because I've learned so much. And I'm glad, because now I can share this message and amplify it. But also I'm going to invite a ton of people to join me at Rainbow Push on Saturday, so that we can all be enlightened and learn, so other people can share their outrage and express that to the masses. But thank you so much, Greg. Thank you, Santita.
Well, I think it's going to animate voters, because when we hear these stories, Greg Palast, and he presents them, Dr. LaShawn Latrice of Make Noise for Change, community psychologist. She's someone you need to be talking to, Greg Palast. This is when you see how much the vote matters. And this is when you see, like, wait a minute, this can make me want to vote. It helps me to see why I need to vote. And it helps me to see that some people sit up all night long, plotting and planning to stop me from voting. Be very clear. That's what's going on. These people have a plan for us. Rainbow Push. You don't want to miss it. Greg Palast will be there. We're showing his movie Saturday at Rainbow Push at 4 p.m. Central Standard Time. You need to be there. The Nation magazine will be honoring Reverend Jesse Jackson. You're going to have Congresswoman Ilhan Omar, Reverend Jackson's partner in the struggle, Senator Bernie Sanders. Indeed, he came out of the Jackson campaigns of 84 and 88. We're going to have Reverend Dr. William Barber in the Poor People's Campaign, Reverend Al Sharpton in the National Action Network, the Nation magazine, of course, John Nichols and Katrina Vanden Heuvel. So many people. Judge Greg Mathis, who is the co-chair of our Push for Excellence program, Dr. LaShawn Latrice and Make Noise for Change, Jewish Voice for Peace, and Jewish Voice for Peace Action, and If Not Now. And it's going to be something so special. We're going to be bringing women. We're going to be bringing everybody together. But I tell you what, before you get out the room, Reverend Jackson is going to want to know, are you registered to vote? But that's all, you know, that's
and checking your registration.
And go to vote.org and, you know, keep checking up until the day you go to vote. Because many places do have same day on-site registration, right, Greg?
In California, it's supposed to start, but it hasn't yet.
In Illinois, it has started. In Illinois, it has.
Yes. Oh, good.
Started. But check.
So bring your ID with you, because if you're knocked off the voter rolls, just demand to be re-registered right there. A lot of places don't tell you that you can register on the day.
But do the judges know?
You know, it's surprising. A lot of judges don't know their own rules. They try to, and then in some, like in California, they were ordered not to tell voters that they could re-register. So, so in other words, even though the nice volunteer behind the desk wants to tell you, you know, you can re-register, they're not allowed to. It's crazy. It's insane.
And it's
so you have to know your own rights, and you have to fight for them, and you have to, and also in a lot of states, if they do give you a provisional ballot, I know it's difficult, but you may have to go into your county office with and get that, what they call a curing your ballot. Barbara Arnwine, who will be at the film tomorrow, can tell you all about it. That's one of the reasons why they elected 2 Democratic senators out of Georgia, is that so many African Americans and young people were shunted to provisional ballots, that they got at least 10,000 cured, that is fixed, so they could be counted. I mean, it's a lot, it's work, but you know, the reason why they're blocking your vote, it's valuable. They only steal something because it's worth a lot.
Greg Palast, everybody, the best democracy money can buy. You should get the DVD. You should get the book. They're wonderful. And Vigilantes Inc. Rainbow Push tomorrow, as we are in the midst of our convention. It's going to be something special. I'm Santita Jackson. I love you so much. May God bless you. See you at Rainbow Push, and we'll be looking and dealing with the DNC for the next few days. Wow, what an exciting time.
Hooray.
AM 950 Radio. I'm Santita.